Or conference. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to this morning's wonderful presentations and conferences for
We
everyone.
have evening right now. For you, morning.
Yes, yes, thank you. You're right. Thank you. Good evening. Good everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to everyone. So happy you guys could be here. Oh, camera. Welcome to everyone. Welcome to people from KGTSOL. Welcome to people from the online world of learning. Welcome to people from Uzbekistan. Welcome to people from the Philippines, from Greece. We have presenters that are coming from all over the world, from Europe, from the UK, from Kuwait, and from so many countries. You are very, very welcome. I'm very happy to greet you and thank you for coming. I hope today is very valuable for everyone. Welcome. Welcome to everyone. Yes, warmly greeted. Excellent. Yes, excellent use of the passive voice. Welcome to university people. Welcome to kindergarten teachers. Welcome to high school, middle school, primary school. Welcome to every kind of teacher and professor that we could possibly imagine. I know we have everyone from every kind of country and every walk of teaching. But hopefully everybody's a teacher. If not, you might be bored. Welcome. Welcome to everyone. So happy to be here and to see some familiar faces, and especially excited to see some new faces. Great, thank you. Yeah, wonderful. If you guys want to put your introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be wonderful. That will make everybody feel very comfortable. Yes, please introduce yourself in the chat. We will begin with our keynote speaker in just a few moments. Does anybody else want to introduce themselves in the chat? That would be wonderful. Oh, great. I'm glad to see someone is here from OSH, from OSH. That's wonderful. Right, we have Kyrgyzstan. Yes, we have a lot of people from KGTSOL. Great, Iran, wonderful. And is Dr. Rashidova here?
Mayor, we'll give her, I'm just calling her. We'll give her 5 more minutes. If she's not here, we'll start with our first presenter. Because I don't think it is, I don't think it is wise to just waste everybody's time.
Right.
Is that fair?
Of course.
At this point, I would really request everyone to keep your microphones off. You can keep your videos on. If you have a question or you have any other concerns, just put them in the chat box so that we don't disturb anybody. And if you have your amazing kids by your side also interested in our conference, great, they're welcome, but their little fingers should be off the screen because we had a presenter last time and there were doodles on her presentations. We don't want that to be the case this time. Doodles are great, just not on the screen when we are recording. Like Miriam said, welcome to all, and thank you so much for taking your time out. You know, different parts of the world, different time zones, but you're all making it happen. So thank you. Over to you, Miriam.
Welcome to everyone from every part of the world. I know my camera's messed up. Sorry about that. My name is Miriam Oppenheimer, and I'm here from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in the United States. That's on the East Coast. We're about 2 hours from New York City and 2 hours from Washington, DC. And hello? And I'm very happy to present today the presenters that are coming. Thank you to KGTSOL for all of your participation in your conference. And today we are so happy to be here. And we're happy to be here. And today we were talking about the very exciting and important conference topics of sustainable global education. Our first, should I share my screen? I can't. It's really great that everybody here came on time. I'm very grateful and very excited that we are all here. We're up to 26 participants, which is fantastic and great. I can't share my screen. Does anybody want to share their screen?
Miriam, we're making you the co-host. Just give us a minute.
Okay, no problem.
Look at this. Can you make her the co-host, please?
That's okay. Is Dr. Rashidova here yet? Great beginning.
No, we go ahead with the first presenter.
She is. Okay, so our first presenter is Jocelyn Dimala from the United Christian College in the Philippines. Is she here?
Yeah, I'm checking. I don't see her. That's very interesting.
All right, let's very important activity we have to do before we get started. Will everyone raise your hand if you have had any experience with artificial education, artificial intelligence? Everyone, please raise your hand if you've had any experience. You can raise your real hand, or you can raise your artificial hand, right? If you've had any experience with any kind of artificial intelligence in the last 2 months. So did you do anything with it in the month of April or the month of May? Have you been experimenting? What have you tried? Go ahead and raise your hand to show us that you have been playing with this, experimenting with this. Are you showing some curiosity about this? everybody show. Oh, that's interesting. So it doesn't look like a lot of people are very excited about this artificial intelligence. I think I've been to 3 meetings about it so far, and it's been very, very interesting. It's a tool like anything else. Sometimes hammers are good and they help us to build a house, and other times hammers, you could use it to hurt your toe. So I feel that AI, for example, ChatGPT, can be used in a positive way. I have experimented with it in my classroom a little bit, and I hope you guys will also experiment with it, with the artificial intelligence. We have ChatGPT. I haven't been able to get on to ChatGPT yet because every time I want to experiment, the website is busy. However, there are other AI kinds of programs. The one that I've been using is called you.com, YOU.com. So I've been experimenting with that. I've allowed my students to use it for some interesting activities in the classroom. I was interested to see how many of my students already had ChatGPT accounts, which was a surprise to me. And we have been trying to discover what the best thing is. I had a student use it for his whole college essay, and I said, "You use ChatGPT. You can't do that in your college essay." And then the next essay he submitted, he clearly had used artificial intelligence, and then he went through and changed most of the words to synonyms. It was very interesting because now it was so awkward. Many of the synonyms were clearly produced by him, and he didn't know what those words meant. And it was a very crazy essay. And so this poor fellow, after you cheat twice in my class, I have to report you to the dean. And so he had a difficult time of it, but it was very educational for me. And I was very impressed that he was able to use ChatGPT so early in history. So few people are using AI, but very soon our students are going to be using AI without permission. So this is why I've decided to use it and let the students try it and experiment with my permission. I think it's very important in all classes that we don't allow them to use AI unless it is with permission. So in order to prevent that, we need to make sure that our classes are engaging and that each individual assignment is not weighing too much. There's not too much pressure on one assignment, and instead we would have several assignments, each one with equal balance of weight that is giving management to the grade. So I'm very excited and interested in the AI, and we also have been making sure our students do some handwriting in the classroom, and to take that beginning rough draft to take that home to type up so that the students are not using AI without permission. But I think ChatGPT and you.com will continue to be parts of everyone's lives, and we need to prepare nicely for that. So I'm excited to hear our presenters speak about that, in addition to the very important topics that they're also talking about, they're presenting about. So design is so important. So, all right. Is Jocelyn or Dr. Rashid, is Jocelyn Dimala here yet?
Mir, we'll go with Caitlin from UK.
Wonderful, wonderful. Caitlin, are you ready to present a little bit early? I see you're muted.
Yes, it's quite a bit early. I was looking at the chat, but yes, I'm fine. You know, it's okay.
All right. Well,
It's okay.
I'm so delighted to see you, and I'm so happy that you were among the first people to be log in today. Before you start, Muktas is going to say a few words. Muktas Tashieva, here from 2 different countries, here to present. I'm so happy, my friend and my colleague. I'm so happy that you are here to say a few words to start off the conference. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariam. So good morning and good evening, dear honorable our conference guests, participants. We are delighted to start our the 3rd Design Thinking Education Conference. And as you know, the conference aims to enhance teaching skills through the process of problem solving that begins with our understanding the students' learning needs. And here we are to share our experience and to enhance your teaching skills in order to meet our learners' needs. And you are welcome to engage in the chat, asking questions, sharing your experience, and of course, introducing yourself about your country as well. So now I would like to present our next presenter, Dr. Kate Mesrin-Reynolds. She's a professor of TESOL literacy at Central Washington University. She has taught educators in the US and abroad at universities and public schools districts. Dr. Reynolds, she has a lot of publications included.
Muktas, we're going to start with Dr. Catalin.
Catalin, sorry.
Sorry, everybody. Apologize.
Because of our... Mariam, can you go ahead?
No, this is yours.
Yeah, sorry, excuse me. Dr. Catalin, she's Dr. Ketel Negri, so we would like to introduce you. She's a researcher interested in this design thinking education, and she presents Hungarian and British universities. And you will learn a lot from our experienced presenter. And Dr. Catalin, you are welcome to present.
Thank you very much for the introduction. May I share my screen? At the moment, I can't. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Yeah, they're going to make you the co-host. Just give us a minute.
Yeah. Perfect. Perfect. And I'm just trying to, yes. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, I'm just trying to make everybody disappear so that I can also see my screen. So I was listening carefully, and 2 things have already been mentioned. One is obviously design thinking education, which is the conference. So design thinking, and problem solving was also mentioned. And I think that for both creativity is an essential component. So I'm going to look at creativity today. And the title of my presentation is Creativity in English Language Teaching, because I will be illustrating some of the things that I will talk about from my experience. And I am an English language teacher educator, and researcher in this area. But I believe that the principles can be applied across the board. So even if somebody is not an English language teacher, but a teacher of another language, or simply a teacher, will have benefited from the ideas today. So creativity in foreign and therefore English language teaching is a recurrent theme. And generally, two areas are mentioned when talking about creative education. Firstly, teaching creatively, which according to Jeffrey and Kraft, may be interpreted as being concerned with effective teaching. And second, teaching for creativity, which again, according to Jeffrey and Kraft, has learner empowerment as its main objective, and so could be viewed as creative learning. Research appears to focus on creative learning. At the same time, the agent who brings about creative learning, the teacher, remains underexplored. So how does a teacher become creative? Is it enough to do brainstorming, role play, problem solving, and similar activities on teacher training courses? Is it enough to provide collections of creative activities to copy and expect that teachers will become creative almost by osmosis? Well, I don't believe so. What I believe is that we need to understand, and we also need to make teachers and teacher trainees understand what creativity is, where it comes from, and we need to include a principled study of creativity in teacher education programs. So how can we define creativity? Defining creativity is notoriously difficult, and there are many different definitions. Beatty collated quite a few. We are not going to read all of them. I'd like you to focus on the words and phrases that are highlighted. And you will see that many are recurrent. There's aptitude, process environment, product, novel, useful, social context, novel, useful, product, produce work, novel, original, appropriate, useful, adaptive. So these words keep cropping up in all these definitions. So we can see that whichever way the definitions are worded, they are gathered around similar ideas. I personally prefer Beatty's own definition, who says that creativity is the capacity within individuals to develop ideas for the purpose of solving problems and exploiting opportunities. I like the way that he dispels the myth of creativity when he says that creativity is not art, it is not design, and it most certainly is not the sole preserve of tortuous geniuses and mad scientists. Creativity is a capacity. It is something that we can all learn to use more effectively. It allows us to develop ideas to solve problems in different ways and to spot, adapt to, embrace, and capture opportunities. So, what is creativity made up of? What are the components? We are going to look at Amabile's componential theory of creativity. in which Amabile talks about the elements of creativity and explains their role. She herself defines creativity as the production of a novel and appropriate response, product, or solution to an open-ended task. The response must be appropriate to the task to be completed or the problem to be solved. That is, it has to be valuable, correct, feasible, or somehow fitting to a particular goal. And the task must be open-ended rather than having a single obvious solution. Very importantly, Amabile says that a response or product is creative to the extent that it is seen as creative by the people familiar with the domain in which it was produced. Well, there are two important assumptions that underlie this theory. First, that there is a continuum from low ordinary levels of creativity found in everyday life to the highest levels of creativity found in historically significant inventions, scientific discoveries, and works of art. And second, that there are degrees of creativity in the work of a single individual, even in one domain. And the level of creativity that a person produces at any given point in time is the function of the creativity components operating around that person at that time. So, what are the components of creativity? There are actually 4 components. The first one being domain-relevant skills. That is expertise in the relevant domains, including knowledge, technical skills, intelligence, and talent in the domain where the problem solver is working. So in our case, that is going to be English language, or my case, it's going to be English language teaching. These provide the raw materials on which the individual can draw throughout the creative process. So how can we translate this to language teaching? Jack Richards confirms to us that creative teachers need to have a solid knowledge base. That is, they need to know the language thoroughly, and they need to have a solid understanding of language pedagogy, including teaching methodology and theories of learning. Jack Richards also says that creative teachers draw on their subject matter in building creative lessons, and that without knowledge, imagination cannot be productive. So you cannot just make up as you go. The second component of creativity is creativity-relevant processes, of which there are 3. The first being a cognitive style and personality characteristics, conducive to a number of areas that you can see on the screen. I'd like to highlight 2 of these. First of all, risk-taking, because creative teachers are willing to try things out, even if it at times they may not work as they were intended, or they may not work at all. And I'd like to highlight confidence rooted in a teacher's expertise. Creative teachers are confident in their expertise, which enables them to have a rationale and purpose for the creative activities chosen. They choose these activities not necessarily for their novelty value, but because they reflect the teacher's knowledge and understanding of teaching and learning. The next process, the cognitive processes, include ability to use wide flexible categories for synthesizing information and an ability to break out of perceptual and performance scripts, which means that creative teachers are non-conformists. They use and create lessons and teaching materials that not only reflect their own individual teaching styles, but also matches the learner's needs better. And the personality processes include self-discipline, tolerance for ambiguity, and critical reflectivity. Specifically, critical reflectivity allows teachers to reflect on their own practice and seek to expand their knowledge and find new ideas and practices. The third component of creativity is task motivation, and we are all familiar with intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, so I'm not going to go into details about these. What is, however, important and an important part of the componential theory of creativity is the intrinsic motivation principle, which says that people are most creative when they feel motivated primarily by the interest, enjoyment, satisfaction, and challenge of the work itself, and not by extrinsic motivators. However, Vasadur and Lissina tell us that the relationship of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation to creative performance is not either or. It is a combinative relationship where we need both intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation if we are to optimally execute the multi-stage creative process. And the final component of creativity is the social environment. That is our work environment. This includes all the extrinsic motivators that have been shown to undermine intrinsic motivation, and all the other factors in the environment that can serve as obstacles or as stimulants to intrinsic motivation and creativity. So basically, we are talking about the ethos of the school or the ethos of the institution here. There are a number of factors in the work environment that can block creativity. And I'm sure that you recognize quite a few of these. These are norms of harshly criticizing new ideas, political problems within the organization, an emphasis on the status quo, a conservative risk attitude among top management, excessive time pressure that teachers seem to have, and also, very importantly, having to teach to assessment may be a factor that blocks creativity. There are, however, other factors that stimulate creativity, and again, I'm very sure that you recognize all of these. So a sense of positive challenge in our work, work teams that are collaborative, managers who encourage the development of new ideas, top management that supports innovation, mechanisms for developing new ideas and for sharing these ideas across the organization. We can be creative at different levels. On the level of content and pedagogy, we can relate to task design creatively. We can be creative in the methods, approaches, and techniques we use in the classroom. And also we can be creative in the way we design our courses. Also, we can show creativity in how we evaluate our programs. And last but not least, we can be creative in how we assess our students. Now, what we need to be mindful is that all the four components, the domain relevant skills, creativity relevant processes, task motivation, and the social environment all influence the creative process. In the creative process, there are sub-processes, and I will illustrate these with an example from my own practice. The first sub-processes analyzing and articulating the exact nature of the problem to be solved. So at one point, I became aware that a particular cohort of students who were learning English for academic purposes found it challenging to understand what a noun clause is and how to form noun clauses and what variation exists. So what I did, I gathered the different types of noun clauses and analyzed them. And then I thought about how I could make the idea, the notion, the concept of a noun clause accessible to my students. And I created a table, and this is the table that I created. It's a very simple table. It starts with a simple sentence. The student knows the answer. And the most important elements here are the subject and the object, because they are expressed by a noun. In a very simple sentence, they are expressed by a noun. So then we looked at how this noun can be substituted and what clauses we can use to substitute the object. So the students understood that an object can be not only a noun, but it can also be a clause. Therefore, this clause is called a noun clause. We looked at other possibilities, the if clauses, and then we looked at a different type of verb, which has its own requirement. We can use a noun, a gerund, or clauses. And finally, so we started with the object because this seems to be easier to grasp. And then when the students understood this, then we went on to see how we could substitute the subject, the other noun in the sentence, how we could use clauses to substitute the subject, which is a noun. So they understood that even in the position of a subject, we can use a clause, and this is still going to be a noun clause because it functions as a subject. So just coming back here. So I figured out this table. I used this table in class together with associated practice material. And then since it seemed to be working very well, and students had this eureka moment when they said, oh, so it's so simple. So what is it that we didn't understand? I shared the idea with my colleagues. And here you can see, this is a diagram from Amabile, that the sub-processes are not rigid. The sequence is not rigid. The sub-processes can occur in any sequence and will often recur iteratively until a creative outcome has been attained. So you can see up here, we have the processes, the various stages of the process, how they are related to the components of creativity, how they feed back to and fro. So finally, I think I would like to conclude by quoting Richards, who says that learning to be a creative teacher does not mean modeling or copying the practices of other creative teachers. It means understanding the principles that underlie creativity, which can then lead to operationalizing these practices and principles in creative teaching. So everybody is creative and we can all develop our creative competencies. We are just very good at forgetting this fact. And these are my references. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Katalin. It was really creative. We could start our conference with the creative presentation. So dear participants, if you have any questions, you are welcome. You can raise your hands and ask questions or type in the chat box.
Thank you so much to Dr. Yes, thank you so much. I really feel seen as I feel as a creative teacher. I feel that you really understood the way that I think and that you understand the barriers that sometimes arise. I love the acknowledgement that creative teachers are risk takers and sometimes we fail. And I also love the idea of the intrinsic motivation, how important that is. And I think I'm going to use that noun clause examples where the students produce the rules, because I've also been struggling with a little bit of noun clause, like when I give the rules, what should I have the students do about that? So that was a very, that is something that I'm going to take home with me. Well, I am home to keep. Let's see if we have a few questions. What questions do people have? I always say, what questions do you have? Not do you have questions? Do you see the difference of that? What questions do people have?
Maybe there was too much food for thought and people need to process.
Maybe they're shy. Yes, wonderful. Manisha, are you raising your hand?
Yeah, if people are shy, let's begin the question so that they follow. Caitlin, amazing. As Miriam said, yes, we are risk takers. I don't think there is a bigger design thinker than a teacher herself. But I have a question. This has been bothering me as a person, as a teacher for many years. We talked about important components for design thinking, for innovation in the classroom. How important do you think is observation? You know, people coming with closed minds, with the PowerPoint presentations and a lot of work that goes into preparing for the class. But what about observation inside the classroom when you are teaching your students? How important is observation?
Observing the teacher, or do you mean observing the teacher, or do you mean observing what learning takes place?
Observing your material, your methodology with relationship to your students. So as you are delivering,
well, it's not a third person observing, but it's you observing your own processes. Yeah, I think it's crucial, because that's how you can actually see whether what you are doing and the materials, whether the materials you are using work. And I have been in all sorts of situations in the classroom, and the same material will not work the same way with two groups. Same levels, same materials, same everything, same assessment. And you go into one classroom, you think you've planned everything nicely out, and it goes beautifully. And you say, ha, this was a good class. Students were working, they were learning, there was interaction, everything was fine. Then you go into the other class, you have two parallel classes, you go into the other class, and it's not moving. And you that's the point when I think you need to start thinking on your feet. And you need to be able to modify, adapt and modify. And if need be, you just abandon everything and say, Okay, folks. So I can see you are a bit tired today. So let's do something different. And then you just do the class from the top of your head. So I think, and then you come back to what was missed another time, the following class, the following lesson. I think I would say being self-aware and being aware of your classroom is very important.
Yeah. And then I have a related question. I see Marine's hand is up. Marine, I'll give you a chance. Just give me one more minute because it sort of relates to where Caitlin left. So being in the shoes of your students, like all the time, is extremely essential, I believe. And also that creativity itself is like an ongoing process. You know, it's like, you know, this thing worked last time, but oh my God, it didn't this time. So I feel that's where we make a distinction between a novice teacher and an experienced teacher. But you grow in experience faster, quicker, if you have your eyes and your mind open. Is that fair to say?
I think it's fair to say, and in my presentation, I did emphasize that knowledge of your subject is essential. You can't make up from nothing. And novice teachers may have one part of the knowledge. So they may know the language. They may have a detailed understanding of the language system, but they may be lacking, at least in the area of practicing the knowledge of methodology that they acquired on their courses. And it takes time. But yes, novice teachers tend to be less creative because they have less in their repertoire to fall back onto. But I agree with you, Manisha, that they build this up because creativity is not just knowledge. Knowledge is essential. Without knowledge, it doesn't work. But experience is also an essential element of creativity.
Yeah, I've been talking about these things in my department like forever. So you be ready. We might call you to come and present at Temple University. These are really, really important. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Let's let Dr. Marine Milad have a moment.
Marine?
Can you hear me now? Hi.
Yes, yes.
Hi. Okay, great. Thank you for the great presentation. Creativity is a great issue, and as you said, and on most of the comments, that the creative teacher must be a risk taker that can take risks and take responsibility of the consequences of any new or modern method you're trying, or innovative method you're trying to apply in your classroom. And I've just finished the paper on a strategy for classroom, and the main point was improvisation. And yet, yes, improvisation is considered one of the sub aspects of creativity. Of course, please correct me if I'm wrong regarding this point. My question is related to the criteria of judging creativity, or the criteria of measuring creativity. Unfortunately, based on many researcher results, and many researchers didn't agree on a specific criteria for measuring creativity, because it's by nature cannot be measured or limited to a certain rubric with certain items. So do you agree that it's beyond limits to decide what's creative and what's not, or there can be a rubric or a standard where we can use in order to consider creativity, and if improvisation is one of the aspects of creativity? Thank you.
I think I agree that improvisation stems from creativity. If you are not creative, you won't be able to improvise, but you can improvise if you have the knowledge and the experience. So we are going back to the components of creativity. But I'd like to go back to what Amabile says, and I did mention this, that a solution or a response to a problem is creative to the extent that is seen as creative by the people who are familiar with the domain in which it was produced. So in that sense, there is no rubric, because what I find creative in my English language teaching may mean nothing to somebody who teaches history, because we are in two different domains, or somebody who teaches mathematics, because
Exactly.
it's
Yeah,
so.
thank you. I agree. Can't agree anymore.
So I think creativity is domain specific. Okay, there is everyday creativity. What am I going to cook? You know, sometimes I just think, oh, what is it that I can find in my pantry? I don't want to go to do shopping. What do I have in my pantry? What do I have in my cupboards? Okay, I have ABCD. Okay, let's put them together. There is no recipe. So I just shove things together and a nice meal comes out. So there are everyday levels of creativity. We are all creative. We just don't think about these things as being creative. So I think it's very important to understand that all of us are creative, and we find creative solutions in our everyday lives. And we need to be able to translate that into our work and find the ways. But work requires a little bit more than everyday creativity. But measuring creativity, I think that is a concept that I would struggle with. We can acknowledge something as creative, but levels of creativity, okay. So what is, if we talk about English language teaching, am I creative when I stand in the classroom and a student comes up, that a problem comes up, and I find a solution then and there? Yes, I am. Are theorists, researchers and theorists in English language teaching creative? Yes, they are also creative. So, you know, and how do we measure? Is one more than the other? I don't think we have to quantify everything. We just have to acknowledge the existence.
Thank you so much. I totally think this is a wonderful idea. It's very inspiring. I hope everybody feels excited and inspired and ready to get do something magical in your classroom. Let me go ahead, and I'm so honored and excited to introduce our next speaker. But first, we're going to take just a quick break. So should we take a break?
Yes, Miriam, we have one more question in the chat box to Dr. Katalin, so let me read. So Zeynep Suleymankulova, she's from Kyrgyzstan, asking, so thank you, Dr. Katalin, for your presentation. I am interested in the resource or tools do you find helpful in fostering creativity in English language lessons? Are there any? If yes, can you share any of them?
So many, right?
Yeah.
So many, yes.
Yes,
the thing is, there are so many. And when I started my presentation, I said, is it enough to do A, B, C? Is it enough to provide examples and activities, creative activities? And I said, no, that's not enough. But I think that is a good start. So we need to start somewhere when we think about developing the creativity of our teachers. We need to give them some ammunition, if you like, something that they can take away, think about, use as is, or use as they want to use them, adapt them. I used a lot of these books that provide you with different types of activities. And I use some activities as I found them in these books. And I just took some of, for others, I took the ideas. Okay, so this is how it is designed. Okay, what can I use? What fits my context, my teaching context, my students? And this is how actually it starts. So we can, yes, there are quite a few books. They will not be called creative books or creativity, but they will be activities, collections of all sorts of activities for general English, for using literature in the language classroom, for business English, for intercultural communication. And by starting to use these activities and modifying them, you start actually getting into the creative spirit, if you like. So there is a lot of published material that is available out there.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So we're just going to take a quick 5-minute break so people can text their grandmother or go to the bathroom, stretch, whatever you need to do. Thank you so much, Dr. Catalina Griku-Mesu. I'm so happy and inspired by your presentation. All right, so we will start in 5 minutes. We will reconvene.
To put a fixed rubric. This is the point. That's why I asked. I keep telling them, yeah, I'm specialized in assessment. I can design a rubric for courses, for sessions, for anything that has a fixed standard. But to judge something that is creative, it's subjective. This is what I believe.
Yes and no. Yes and no. I agree to a great degree. It is subjective. Well, other judgments are also subjective. Assessment judgments are subjective. No two teachers, even if we do standardization 100 times, no two teachers will necessarily give the same mark to the same assignment. Or if they agree on a final mark, they will differ in the various component marks. So yes, it is subjective. Judgments are always subjective. I would need to go back to the domain. So what domain are we looking at? What variables we need to look at in that domain? And how we can establish a rating scale. What rating scale would be meaningful in that particular domain, and for the particular purpose that we need to create the criteria for.
Thank you so much.
So it is doable if we consider, for example, aspects of critical thinking and problem solving, like what Manisha has just suggested.
It's possible, yes. If those fit the context, if they have to be recognized as meaningful in the context in one particular domain. If these concepts are meaningful in the context, yes.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. We're going to take a picture. So if everybody would please, if you want to, show your face for just 1 second so we can take a picture before Dr. Jocelyn's presentation. That would be wonderful. And Chinara is going to take a picture, right? So thank you to everybody for showing your face. Chinara, do you want to say 1, 2, 3, cheese? If it's not your culture.
1, 2, 3, cheese.
Thank you so much to everybody. Great. Oh my, now my camera messes up. That's good. Okay. So I'd like to introduce, and I want to officially apologize about the schedule as a little bit delayed, but such is life. We are teachers, we are creative, we are flexible. And so here we are, 30 minutes late, but that's okay. This is Jocelyn Dimala from the UNEDA Christian College in the Philippines, who's going to talk to us today about the use of design thinking in transdisciplinary education. So important. She is a global sustainability ambassador, a women in tech ambassador, and a leadership award in a women in tech technology. Professional ambassador of Global School Alliances and Climate Action Projects. So really working that multidisciplinary thing. That's so exciting. She's an honoree of Education 2.0, an International Outstanding Leadership Award winner, and to be interdisciplinary even more, she's a robotics coach. I'm so psyched to hear what you have to say, Jocelyn, about design thinking. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, hello, everybody. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure. Thank you for inviting me as well. Is it a good morning to all of you? Maybe a good afternoon to some and a good evening to me here in the Philippines. Okay, so again, it's nice to see you all here. Thank you so much. Let me share with you my screen. Okay, so today's presentation is about the use of design thinking in transdisciplinary education. First is we have the session objectives. Number one is to introduce participants to the Global Education Framework and the UN SDG 4. Present some challenges in global education, review the design thinking methodology, define transdisciplinary education, and learn the use of design thinking in transdisciplinary education. So this is the first question. In your school, do you prefer to work alone or work in a group, and why? You might unmute your microphones or use the chat box. Okay, Miriam says both. All right. Okay, most of you says both, right? Both, that is right. Okay, according to Manisha. According to Burleson, it depends on the situation. So sometimes I like to be alone. It's so fun to get others' teachers' ideas too. Both depends on the educational environment, which is very true. Yep, both. Okay, somebody says alone. It's Valentina. Okay, and most of you are teachers, right? And most of you says both, and it depends on the situation. Okay. Definitely. Okay. Now let's take a look at this sustainable development goal. I'm sure that we are already aware of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, and especially number 4, which is quality education. Okay. So our SDG 4 says that we need to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities. That means no one should be left behind, right? Okay, so what about the 21st century skills of the learners? I'm sure since we are all educators here, most of us are educators here, we are very familiar with the 21st century skills that our learners need to have. So these are the learning skills, we have the literacy skills, life skills, and so on. Now, there are a lot of different skills that are also needed in the digital or the global classroom. And you're familiar with that. That includes collaboration, right? The ability to find and select information, effective communication, e-safety, creativity, functional skills, critical thinking, cultural and social understanding. And of course, these are all integrated, these skills are all interconnected in their knowledge, values, and attitudes, as you can see in the dimensions of a global education concept. Okay, now this is the Education 2030. This is the framework for global education, which again says or outlines that values, knowledge, the skills, and opportunities for action within this 5 interconnected learning emphasizes and they're encompassing spatial and temporal dimensions. Again, all of these things are interconnected, and these are our global goals for education. Now, we also know that education is an investment. So when we say education is an investment, we also mean that this is something that is one of the most important things, right? Not just as a student, but also as a parent, as a member of the school community. And so education, it says, equates to development. Okay. Now it says here that education proves to be one of the best sustainable development tools for individuals, families, and societies. All right. That is why it is one of our global goals, which is SDG number 4. Now, for you, what are the most important skills that students need to develop in the global classroom? So remember, we have, again, review some of the skills of the learners in the 21st century. So in your opinion, what are the most important skills that students need to develop in the global classroom? Let me see some answers here. Okay, communication, I can see that. Life skills, critical thinking and communication, according to Nardiza. Communicative skills, teamwork, right? So these for you are the most important skills that a learner or learners should possess in the global classroom. Okay. That is right, because I believe you cannot work alone in a global setting, in global classroom. Okay, so now presenting to you the challenges in education. So let's just review these challenges. Again, we are in the VUCA world. They say it's not VUCA alone, it's now with 2 Ds, the VUCA world, right? So aside from volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, we also added 2 Ds, which means disruption. And what's the other one? What is the other D? Seems that I forgot the other D. So we have to search on that again. Okay. So meaning in this VUCA world or VUCA world, what are the essential skills that our learners need? Not just our learners, actually. What are the essential skills that leaders or educators need in order for us to thrive? It's a fast-changing world, right? We have a lot of these challenges. This includes sudden shocks, threatens values and objectives. We have quick spreading fear and depression, anxiety, and so on. So what about the environment? So aside from globalization, the quality, standardization, rapid changes in all sectors and aspects, these is not only for education or education sector, right? This is our world, which is the fast changing world. So in education, we may say we have lack of sharing. We always say that, oh, we have a lack of teamwork, lack of cooperation, lack of resources, and in some cases, lacking capabilities. See, of our teachers, our educators, even school leaders. So now let us try to define design thinking and transdisciplinary education. Design thinking is, I believe, it's both a methodology and a framework that provides a solution-based approach to solving problems. It's extremely useful when you use to tackle complex problems, right? Okay, now we know that design thinking also has been long considered the holy grail of innovation and the remedy to stagnation. It says design thinking is both an ideology and a process that seeks to solve complex problems in a user-centric way. I'm sure you are very much familiar with the steps, with you know, the process and how we do this design thinking, right? You have to empathize. We do interviews. What else aside from interviews? So that we say that we are empathizing. We sometimes shadow, right? We do shadowing. We always seek to understand. We became non-judgmental to things, and so we empathize. Second is we define, right? So in defining there is a challenge. So what are the challenges? So you're looking or finding the challenges. What are the pain points? So you define. Next is you ideate. So when you ideate, you share your ideas. All ideas are worthy. Remember that. And of course, we prioritize. Now, we do prototyping. We prototype, meaning we do mock-ups, etc. We iterate, right? And then we do the testing. So we test. So we try to understand the impediments. We role play. We are trying to identify what works and what doesn't really work. And now we're using this design thinking processes because we know that there is a need, like research, there is a felt need. That's why we create this kind of process, right? We make use of this process. We innovate. We use out of the box thinking to do it. Okay. Now, what is transdisciplinary education? Transdisciplinary education is a holistic approach that seeks to integrate knowledge and skills from multiple disciplines to solve complex problems. We also know that it requires a deep understanding of the different fields, not only one, of course, two, but more, and the ability to work across disciplinary boundaries. It also encourages the development of critical thinking, collaboration, and creativity skills. Now, since this is a holistic approach to education, we know that it also is very much connected with innovation, right? And with this thinking process, we form this kind of mindset that is very important for us to get what we need. And again, it, like design thinking, it is not a linear process. We can iterate and go back, you know, and find the right solution to a specific problem. And that's what we do. Okay, now what can you say about these photos? Oh, this is the first one. Can you please describe this photo? It's like, it's very ideal, right? It's like, it's an educational or a global classroom from a smart city, smart school. It's kind of very ideal environment for an education system. You can see outside this building, there are greens, right? There are a lot of, you can see different sustainable programs here. And inside that building, you can see that cozy place, very comfortable place for all. What about this photo? And it says on the right side of the slide, education is the key to success. So can you please describe this photo? Oh yes, I got very good answers in the first one. They say life in a different phase of education, harmony between nature and technology. That's very good. Now, Miriam says this photo now that I'm showing is, difficult teaching environment, but the students are attentive, right? Okay, so according to Zelina, it's the opposite picture of the previous. Wow, chances for all. Right. Low development, that is right. See, that's very different, right? Very opposite in nature. When you try to look at these photos, you can see that there are challenges, but still, they are trying their best to educate their learners. In another picture, another photo, you can see still they are trying to innovate, to have a collaborative environment of whichever topic they have on that day. So see how important it is to innovate in whatever situation we are at the moment. Okay. Now, what are the uses of design thinking in transdisciplinary education? And the question here is, why do we encourage our teachers, our learners, and the entire school community, to collaborate with other global educators? Okay. The first is problem identification. Second, empathy and user-centeredness. Third, we have this ideation and co-creation. Number 4 is prototyping and iteration. 5 is reflection and evaluation, and communication and presentation, number 6. So design thinking can be a valuable approach when applied to transdisciplinary education. And we know that transdisciplinary education focuses on integrating knowledge and methodologies from various disciplines to address complex real-world problems. So design thinking, with its human-centered and iterative nature, aligns well with the goals of transdisciplinary education. So how design thinking can be incorporated into transdisciplinary education? Again, number 1 is problem identification. Design thinking starts with identifying a problem or a challenge. In transdisciplinary education, students can explore real-world issues that require collaboration and expertise from multiple disciplines. So this process encourages students to look beyond disciplinary boundaries and identify problems that require a transdisciplinary approach. Now, the next is empathy and user-centeredness. Design thinking emphasizes understanding the needs and perspectives of the users or the stakeholders. Now, in transdisciplinary education, students can engage with diverse stakeholders, including individuals from different disciplines, industries, and communities, by practicing empathy and conducting user research. Students can gain holistic understanding of the problem and identify the relevant insights. Now, the third is ideation and co-creation. Design thinking promotes generating a wide range of ideas and encourages collaboration. So in transdisciplinary education, students can engage in brainstorming sessions or design studios where they can share their disciplinary knowledge and perspectives. This collaborative environment facilitates the emergence of innovative ideas and solutions that leverage the strengths of different disciplines, which we know is very, very important. Now, next will be prototyping and iteration. Design thinking emphasizes the creation of prototypes and the iteration of ideas based on feedback. Now, transdisciplinary education, students can create prototypes of their solutions or interventions, integrating their knowledge from different disciplines. So now there is rapid prototyping approach and testing, and students can refine their ideas, gather feedback, from diverse perspectives, and so on. Next is reflection and evaluation, which is the number 5. So design thinking encourages continuous reflection and evaluation of ideas and solutions. In transdisciplinary education, our students or our learners can reflect on the outcomes of their interventions, considering the impact on various stakeholders and the potential for future improvements. This reflection process helps students develop a critical mindset and fosters a culture of learning from failures and successes. Now we move on to number 6, which is communication and presentation. So design thinking emphasizes effective communication and storytelling. In transdisciplinary education, students or our learners can develop their communication skills by presenting their solutions to diverse audiences. And that's what we're doing here, including experts from different disciplines, policymakers, or community members. The skill is crucial for bridging disciplinary gaps and advocating for transdisciplinary approaches in addressing complex problems. So these are the things that we try to integrate, the process of design thinking to transdisciplinary education. And by integrating design thinking into transdisciplinary education, students develop a mindset that values collaboration, empathy, iteration, and effective communication across disciplines. And this approach, also equips them with the right skills needed to address complex real-world challenges by leveraging the knowledge and methodologies of multiple disciplines. Okay. Now, try to look at this photo. Okay, what can you say about this? I am very sure that you are very familiar with the country Philippines, right? Okay, Philippines is one of the countries with not so good technology, or let's say not so good when it comes to technological resources or the advantages in educational technology. But look at this photo. This is a photo of what we call school in a bag. See, these students came from the students in, far away places, actually in the mountains. And we try to find ways. We try to innovate. Okay, let me show you what school in a bag is. So there is a big company in the Philippines, which is also Smart company. This is Smart Innovation. School in a Bag is a portable digital classroom designed to facilitate learning and basic education in remote areas without electricity. So as you can see, it says there, it utilizes mobile technology coupled with this innovative 21st century teaching and learning, teaching pedagogies are there, learning activities and a K-12 content to enable learning. So with the recent trends, and again, we're in the VUCA world, the 2Ds, number one, added to VUCA is disruption. And the other one is diversity. See how disrupted, diverse this world. In the fast-changing technology, we are now in not only robotics in education, but we are, having this access to different kinds of AI or generative AI in education. We use artificial intelligence like the ChatGPT and so on. So there are a lot of different innovations, but the Philippines, as one of the not so, technologically advanced countries, are trying to do their own innovation as a country. And I just also want to share with you, before I end this presentation, some of the global collaborations we have in the school. First is we do collaborative projects for Global School Alliance. We have this SDGs to save the world, and we are now in cohort 4. Also, we have different collaborations with countries like India, the UK, and even China. And we have this global exchange program. We have an academic and cultural program for our teachers and students. See, and this is very important in a global classroom. So we also have this Let's Make a Better World. Maybe some of you guys are familiar with this project from the Global School Alliance. And, it's making great impact in not only in our school, but also in the entire community and even in society and the world. Also, we have this World Book Day. Of course, it's a collaborative project with our English department. Now, with our robotics team, since we are the pioneer in robotics technology excellence here in our city, we also have collaborated with our global partners, and we have the Lego Challenge. They are doing this under the Climate Action Project. I'm sure you guys are aware of the Climate Action Project. It is the largest climate action project in educational history. So it is recognized by the World Economic Forum as one of 14 lighthouses in the world. Okay, these are some of the programs that we have. Of course, we are collaborating with different experts in the field, like Jason Mays is a Google expert. Things like that, okay, a lot more. And so I believe that, we should never be alone in this kind of VUCA world. Again, the 2Ds, we have diversity and disruption. And it is very volatile world. We have uncertainties are everywhere. So we have to come together, and I'm sure we can survive and we can make it. This also would like to share with you my last slide. This is one of my favorite quotes from Steve Jobs. It says, a lot of people in our industry haven't had very diverse experiences. So they don't have enough dots to connect. And they end up with very linear solutions without a broad perspective on the problem. The broader one's understanding of the human experience, the better design we will have. And that is it. So I have here some of the references that you might want to check out. Okay, so that.
So much. Thank you, Dr. Jocelyn.
Thank you very much
Yeah.
for listening. Thank you, everyone.
That's just wonderful. I really appreciated the, multiple types of literacy in technology. That's something that I haven't put together in the same way that you put it together. I thought that was very thought provoking. I appreciated that so much. I had never heard of VUCA DD or DD. Is it DD VUCA or VUCA DD?
It's DVUCA.
DD VUCA.
The
Oh,
beginning.
D
letter D.
VUCA. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I never had heard of that, so that was great. Thank you so much for introducing us to a variety of new programs that you have. And I really appreciated thinking about that, all of this, especially the media and tech literacy skills, and making that to be like equal to reading as part of other kinds of literacies. That's just so wonderful. But yeah, education is development, and that's so important. And development is education. Such an important perspective. And I just love how you put things together in a different way. And this is why we need diversity, to hear ideas put together in ways we hadn't considered. It's so wonderful to have a presenter who is a robotics coach. It's so cool. That adds to the diversity of our group. Thank you so, so much. Do we have questions for Miss? Do we have questions for Miss Damala? Just check the chat, see if we have any
I
questions.
cannot see now.
Yeah. Lots of people said, thank you, thank you, thank you. Someone said, is school in a bag? Can you tell a little bit more about school in a bag? The picture was adorable. Love that picture.
Oh yeah, school in a bag is an innovation from Smart Technologies here in the Philippines. It happened during the pandemic, and I believe not all government or public schools were given the opportunity to have that school in a bag. They make use of technology to reach out to really far places in the Philippines, and so they found out how effective this school in a bag is. It's a wonderful technology, and it's all out there, just in a bag. It includes all the teaching materials, the learning materials and activities that they need, even if they are in the mountains. So it's really very nice technology to have.
So it has a generator, it has Wi-Fi, it has
Exactly.
little computers for the kids. What does it have? Like laptops or?
Yeah, it has
tablets?
laptops with them.
Wow, that's
Mhm.
fantastic.
Mhm.
All right. So our next speaker is Dr. Primalis.
Yeah. So before presenting the next speaker, I have one more question to our presenter. So thank you for your presentation. And you know that you aligned your goal with the SDG goals number 4. And how does Indonesia, your country meets this goal? So do you still face some challenges, or Philippines, or especially in developing robotics in education? Yeah. So what do you think about it?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Mukalis. Yeah, definitely a lot of challenges. I'm telling you, a lot. Even if our school is the largest private school in the city with more than 4,000 students in a junior high school, senior high school level, we still encountered a lot of different challenges, like with the verge of technology, with the robotics technology that we have in the school. Even if our robotics elite team already are champions, world champions in the field of virtual robotics, the challenge is that after or before and after the pandemic, you know, the transitioning is not really easy. We have this vast majority of the senior high school who came into our school and enrolled, and we are not so prepared for that. You know, our challenge is now resources. We not lack, but we need more resources for us to be able to introduce to them face to face, hands on, you know, what these new technologies are. We have it virtually, we have it in digital, but when we say face to face and hands on activities for all of them, you know, it's really hard for us to cater all these thousands of students with only a few packages in robotics, which is worth more than millions of pesos in the Philippines. So yeah, still
Thank you very
challenging, but we
much.
are doing our best to.
Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sadly, I think that's the case in every country. No matter how much money we have, it's never enough, right? But thank you so
Okay.
much, so much.
Mhm.
All right, look at us.
Okay, so we would like to invite our next speaker, but before presenting, so you know, all of us, you might agree with me. So teaching literature is something challenging. And when we teach English, so we think and we come to writing, but when we come to write, so literature, so we have to rethink again and what to do. Today's our presenter is Dr. Dimitris Primalis. He is from Greece, and he's a Master of Art in Education. And he has been teaching English for more than 30 years, and he's working as a primary and kindergarten at the EFL coordinated Duca School and a Microsoft Innovative Educator Fellow. And today he is going to help us, support us in teaching literature. And his title is Teaching Literature on a Cloud, Blended Learning for Young Learners. So welcome, Mr. Dimitris Primalis.
Well, thank you very much. I hope you can see my presentation and you can hear me well.
Yeah.
If we can make it work. All right. Now let's see. Okay, my name is Dimitris Primalis. I'm an educator like you, and I'm here because I love to share experience and exchange ideas. Now, I don't know what's happening with your students, but my students claim that they can't live without their devices. And they would be glad to spend 24 hours playing non-stop online video games. But when it comes to reading a book, they simply switch off. And that's a big problem for an English teacher. So that's how I feel when I have to teach literature in a class of students, even though they're in the primary school. And I often feel that I have to walk on a very thin line, trying to motivate them, make them creative, as Dr. Jocelyn Dimala mentioned. So here's the big question. Can I exploit technology to teach literature synchronously and asynchronously to the benefit of my students? So today we'll be talking about tools that you can use, activities, the problems that you might encounter, some remedies, and I'll show you samples of student work. And of course, you can ask questions or share your experiences at the end of the presentation. Let me say, first of all, that I piloted this project with Roald Dahl's Ezio Trot, which is a book well known in Europe. As you know, Roald Dahl has a very good sense of humor. Some of you might not be familiar with the book, so you're going to get a taste of the book very soon in a few seconds. So they say that curiosity kills cats, but in my case, I think it saves the lesson. So even though I wanted to teach the book asynchronously, which is a challenge, I asked my students to watch part of the trailer because there's a film based on the book. And I asked them to tell me what they think happened in the story and what they think Mr. Hoppy's idea was. I would like you to put into the shoes of my students for a few seconds. I want you to watch it And one, I want you can type in the chat box if you want to, say what you think is going to happen. If you know the story, if you've read the book, don't reveal the end. And what you think Mr. Hoppy's idea was. Mr. Hoppy is one of the protagonists. Now let's see if we can make it work.
The story I want to tell you begins with a man called Mr. Hoppy. He was in love.
Mr. Silver.
With the girl downstairs.
I love you so much.
Oh, how Mr. Hoppy wished she was saying those words to him.
We both live in hope that he'll grow a little faster.
That was the seed that planted the idea.
So, would you like to share what you think is going to happen in the story and what you think Mr. Hoppy's idea is? I don't know if you can hear me.
To solve his problem.
All right, let's see. Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, we can hear you, Mr. Dimitris.
Okay, great. Okay. Let me see okay. Right. Now, I hope you can see my next slide. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you perfectly. Yes.
All right, and I hope you can see my slides.
Yeah, people put some ideas in the chat to answer.
All right. Yeah, unfortunately, I can't see them. There's a technical issue, but that's all right. I'm sure that your ideas are great. This is what my students came up with. My students use Teams, and Teams uses an online class notebook, which allows me to use assign tasks, and then I can access the tasks and their pages. For example, this student has divided her class note into different sections. Here is the class notes, and I asked them to write the answers. So in this way, I could make sure that everybody attended, and I could, in my own time at home, without overstretching the syllabus, because it's one of the problems that most teachers face, that they have to teach literature and at the same time they have to teach grammar, vocabulary, you name it, and cover a course book as well. So this gave me time at home to check what they had understood, see what was happening. There. Great, I can see the chat now. Very nice ideas. Great. Okay, so this allowed me to check at home and see what they've understood. And of course, as an English teacher, I also had the opportunity to try and find out what the level of my students is and what kind of language they use to express themselves. Now, another problem that people have, now let me see if I can change the slide, is you can't really know if students, through literature, have assimilated new vocabulary. What I did is I asked students to read parts of the book, and I'm going to show you how I ensured that they read parts of the book. We talked briefly in class for about 5 minutes. So basically, we combined asynchronous and synchronous learning. And one of the problems that I had was whether they had assimilated new vocabulary. The tool that I have used there is called Mentimeter. And you can invite learners to write 3 or 5 words. Here I asked them to write 5 words to describe Mr. Hoppy. Mr. Hoppy is the gentleman you saw there. Now, this is what they came up with. At the end of the very first chapter. A few lessons later, as they progressed, I was trying to find out, because we often discuss things, I often wondered how much they had assimilated. And basically what I did is I asked them after a few lessons to describe again Mr. Hoppy and find out what kind of vocabulary they would use, which was a very useful tool. We did it synchronously in class, but it only takes a few seconds. And it allowed me to see what my students, what kind of vocabulary they would use. Of course, if you can see here, the word lame excuse has nothing to do with Mr. Hoppy. But obviously their vocabulary was much, much richer compared to before reading the book or when they read the first chapter. And of course, when you finish the book, you want to find out if they have understood the themes, because in literature, we often have to identify the theme. I also used Mentimeter, using a different function this time and asking them to complete it at their own pace at home, thinking, mentioning what the main theme of the book is. And of course, I had to say why. As you can see, some responded giving more information, others gave a brief one. But still, I deliberately kept it anonymous so that I would give students the opportunity to express themselves. Because one of the problems that we face is that students who are very shy and they fear that they might make a mistake, they might not respond. Now, I know that you must be wondering, how on earth can you know that your students read the book? Every now and then, I ask questions in the class notebook. And for example, why did Mr. Hoppy wait for 7 days? What's his plan? Do you think that Mrs. Silver will find out about his plan? By the way, his plan was to change the tortoise and make her fall in love with him. And as you can see again, I was able to very easily spot their progress and what they had, their reading comprehension, whether they had kept up with the tasks that I had assigned through the class notebook, which is a very good idea. If you don't class themes, and if you don't have class notebook, you can easily do that with a Google document, or you can share Word documents with students. So you can very easily do that. And it's a very discreet way to find out what your students know. Plus, of course, you can always give them personalized feedback if need be. Now, when I ask my students to do something on paper, they usually will not do it, or they will find several excuses, or they will do it hastily. The problem is that they don't feel very creative. They feel this is a tedious task. So I thought I'd change that a little bit. After they read the story, I asked them to write the key moments of the story, but I didn't ask them to write them on a piece of paper. This is a PowerPoint template. It's very easy. I mean, everybody can find that. And I asked them, I shared it with them through the internet, through Teams, but it could be any platform. And I asked them to record the key moments of the story. So here you can see a couple of answers, and then I collect them, I put them all on a PowerPoint presentation. We talked about it in class and we analyzed it. Now, obviously, creativity is a major issue. And when it comes to students who feel that they're very good at using digital technology, when you ask them to write something in paper, they usually refuse. So this is what I did with my students. I found newspaper templates from Microsoft Word. Of course, it could be Canvas, it could be Google Documents, you name it. I gave them the template, and I also gave them instructions. You're a reporter working for the local newspaper. Miss Silver has confided the whole story to you. Well, of course, they'd read the whole story when they did that. You have decided to write an article for your newspaper. Is it real? Is it fake? Do you believe Mrs. Silver? And of course, I gave them more instructions about finding a catchy title. Now, let's see what they came up with. Of course, they were free to use either the template I had given them, or they could simply use another document. Now, I want you to have a look at the last line. The best articles will be posted on the school blog. And the reason why I gave them this task is simply because students feel that they need to have someone to read it, and I don't mean the English teacher. Most students responded enthusiastically, and this is what they came up with. And to be honest, for most students, it was something I never expected. Now, this student, he wrote these 2 paragraphs. His mom confided that he asked for help, but Anastasis he'd always been very lazy. He was unwilling to do any kind of homework. With this one, he even asked for help. And of course, I received different types of writing. For me, it was very, very useful because I had something concrete on my hands. I could easily see what my students could do. I could collect all the mistakes. It's kind of formative assessment. But of course, without them realizing that. And of course, you can see that depending on their cognitive abilities, they wrote different kinds of texts. One of them actually used his sense of humor. Not only Alfie grew bigger, but Mr. Hoppy managed to grow his family as he got married with Mrs. Silver. What a miracle. I have to find the magic words to grow my salary too. Which I found a very nice way of using the language, trying to express his own feelings and his own sense of humor. Now, another aspect of this project was trying to give learners choices. And of course, students could write that either on a piece of paper. I asked them to write Alfie's story from Alfie's point of view. They could either write that on a Word, or they could create a video. To be honest, nobody created a video. Probably they were far too young. They were in the 5th grade. And even though they're very good at using videos, they didn't feel comfortable enough to do it. Or they could use a PowerPoint presentation. Or they could have written that on a piece of paper. As you can see, the texts that they came up with are fairly long for their level. And this is what I got. Well, this is from school. Before asking them to do that, I took them to the school garden. We've got tortoises there. They took photos. They even took short videos if they wanted to create a video. And this is what another student came up with. I apologize because that's the original material. That's how he created that. What's very interesting is that he has actually elaborated on the story. He didn't copy and paste things, but he used his own personal touch. For instance, at some point, yes, he used illustrations from the book, which I found very creative. But if you have a look here at the last line, I think he was jealous of me because Mrs. Silver loved me so much. This is not a book. That's an inference made by the student himself. And he even expressed that in a very eloquent way. And we're only talking here about a 5th grader whose native language is not English. And as you can see, he kept writing and writing and writing. The last line goes, I tried to warn her, but she could still not understand me. So she did as he said. So basically what he did is he used the text in a very creative way, in a very independent way. I think Roald Dahl, if he was alive today, he would be very proud of him. So as you can see, it was quite long. And of course, he used his sense of humor, saying they're my family, talking about the poor unfortunate tortoise. I try not to think of the past, but I hope that Miss Silver is well and that Mr. Hoppy is in jail. I'm 30 years old now and twice the size. Of course, they needed some help. Who's your favorite character? Describe this character. That's another activity we tried. I gave them detailed instructions on how to do that. And they came up again. Some people came up with bullets. Some others came up with texts. As you can see, some of them were very creative. Now, for this project, I used Mentimeter, Kahoot. I don't know how many of you are familiar with Kahoot, and if we've got time at the end, I can show you how I used Kahoot. Presentations, PowerPoint, OneNote. I used the trailer from YouTube, Edpuzzle, which we're gonna see now, online audiobooks, and book, because I gave them the alternative. If they didn't wanna read the book, they could listen to the book. How many of you are familiar with Edpuzzle? Okay, let's see what it looks like. And okay, and let's see what I asked my students to do. Now let me see if I can share that. Okay, there we go. Hold on. Okay. I apologize. I don't know what's wrong. Anyway, let me briefly explain what Edpuzzle is. You can use a video from YouTube and you can add your own questions. Now, I used another trailer and I asked my students, one, to guess, to listen and write what Mr. Hoppy's love was. He had two loves. One was the flowers and the other one was Mrs. Silver. Two, I asked him to find out who Mrs. Silver loved. And three, at the end of the trailer, because the books are usually quite different compared to the films, I asked him to write down what differences there were between the book and the film, and they responded quite well. Now, obviously, there were many other things that I wanted to do with them, but I didn't have the time to, but I think I can share them with you. So if you allow me, let me see if I can go back to my slides. And let's see some more activities that you can do. If I had the opportunity to try it again, I would probably do some more things with them. Let's see if we can make it work. First of all, here are the activities that I used. I used reflection, character description, timelines. You saw the PowerPoint ones. They had to rewrite the story from a different point of view. I asked them to do a Kahoot quiz. It was a reading comprehension and I introduced themes. They were brainstorming, vocabulary recycling. It was the Mentimeter that you watched. They had to spot differences between the film and the book. It was Edpuzzle. And of course, we had discussions in class. So in other words, we used synchronous and asynchronous learning in a blend. Some more ideas. Is what Mr. Hoppy doing justified? Invite learners to upload a video with their views on Flipgrid. Flipgrid is a tool which allows students to create a short video in a protected environment, giving their views, and only your class can see that. You can invite them to have an online debate with another class on this topic. You can invite them to write an email to RSPCA. That's the organization that protects animals from cruelty, complaining about the conditions the tortoises are kept in Mr. Hoppy's room. Invite learners to create a podcast on the book they have read. What would the main characters write on their Twitter account, if they had Twitter at the time? Try to create fake text exchange between main characters, and that's my favorite application. It's called ifaketextmessage.com. You can invite learners to write the dialogues. Oh my God, I can't believe it. Are you okay? The magic words work. No way, you're pulling my leg. Alfie's grown, it's true. Alfie is the tortoise, and Mrs. Silver is texting a friend, telling her that her tortoise grew bigger. Some more ideas, but these are from the internet, they're not mine. You can write a letter from Mr. Hoppy to Mrs. Silver, inviting her to a cup of tea and a biscuit, which is a very, very usual task, but for students to write a letter, but now you contextualize it. You You make sure that your students have a motive to write that and they become creative. Write a story about a great feat that Mr. Hoppy might perform to make him a hero in Mrs. Silver's eyes. More or less what I asked students to do was a bit similar. Create a report to teach others how to look after a tortoise, write a new story, write your own rhyme that might make Alfie crow, or write a letter to an animal charity asking them about their work. You can modify it, you can use technology to invite students to create digital content. Now, before finishing, this was the teacher's reaction, my fellow, my peers at the staff room, when I said, let's try to teach literature asynchronously. As you can see, their comments were not very positive. They were pretty negative about it. But I felt that my students were engaged. They were exposed to authentic and unabridged language. Their language production was much freer than usual, and they had no inhibitions because most of the language production was done asynchronously, which meant that they were not exposed to the classroom. They had the opportunity to enrich and recycle vocabulary. They discovered literature at a time when all kids use, or most kids, discover tablets and mobile phones. Discovering literature is groundbreaking. And this is my favorite quote. The most dangerous phrase in the language is, we've always done it this way. I wouldn't mind teaching literature in a very traditional way. The problem is that it doesn't seem to be working anymore, at least not with most of my classes. So basically, we might need to rediscover America or reinvent the wheel. And as Mr. Hoppy would say, for those of you who have read the story, you can understand, think outside the box when it comes to doing traditional things, and your students do not respond. Thank you very much. That's my email, and this is my blog. Feel free to send me asking for more information.
Congratulations. I absolutely love it. This is fantastic. I teach a book called Pay It Forward at these things. This is very concrete, very, very inspiring.
Thank you very much.
I've used Edpuzzle before. I've used the Mentimeter before, but to use them both in the same class, I don't think I've ever done that before. This is so cool. Thank you. This is really concrete, really helpful. We do have a couple of questions. Let's start with Dr. Catalin Egri Kumasu.
Thank you. Lots of great ideas in there. I really enjoyed your presentation, but I have some questions. It wasn't clear to me whether you were teaching literature or you were using literature to teach the language.
Most of the classes are EFL or ESL in Greece, which actually means that if it's an EFL class, it's based on a grammar-oriented syllabus. If it's ESL, it's closer to CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Content. And literature is not part of the syllabus unless we're talking about specific classes. But in most schools, literature is not taught at this level. Students might read some graded readers, which are adjusted to the level of the students. But we're talking about, if we're talking about the Common European Framework, we're talking about A2 Common European Framework level, which is not very high.
Is it fair to say that actually you are using literature to promote language learning? So, because teaching literature is something completely different to me. And I did teach literature at university level. So I would think that this what you are doing is using literature for language teaching purposes. And if so, The students, you had a lot of engagement, and that's absolutely fantastic. What I didn't see is a principled approach to language development. So what is it? What was the purpose? So what is it that you wanted to develop? Was it vocabulary? Was it grammar? Because you asked them to write a story. So story writing, they are past, right? So the different past tenses, past simple, past continuous, to give the background, etc. So what I didn't feel is that there was a principled approach to what is it that I want to do with this.
Let me clarify. This is
creating enjoyment, which would be extensive
yeah.
reading.
Let me clarify that this was not part of the syllabus. This was a new scheme piloted because in most cases, the syllabus does not include literature at list level. So obviously what we tried to see was how we could incorporate literature, because obviously the syllabus has a finite number of hours. You can't stretch it, you can't squeeze everything in there. So what we wanted to see was whether students could actually do part of the literature asynchronously and incorporate it through small slots that wouldn't burden the main syllabus. However, what we saw was that the main language taught through the main syllabus, for example, past simple, past continuous, narratives, it all reflected there. And it gave me another perspective as to what my students can do or what they cannot do. The main idea was to give our students a freer, an opportunity to express themselves freely, away from the rigid syllabus. So in a way, this was supplementary. It wasn't the main syllabus. It was through short slots that were repeated once every week, sometimes twice every week.
Wonderful, fantastic. Manish.
Yeah, hey, Caitlin, I have a I'm trying to figure out where your question is coming from. I'm trying to sort of put it into perspective. Are you wondering about what really was the focus of the lesson? Was it the content or the language, or any particular component within the language itself?
The main aim was, first of all, to introduce.
Yeah. Yes, Caitlin.
Well, my first problem here is that we are not really talking about teaching literature. What we are really talking about here is using literature for another purpose, which is teaching the language. And I understand that the literary material may not be part of language teaching per se, because the course books may have one unit on something like literature. But I completely agree that it is always possible to include literature, literary texts, but we are still not talking about teaching literature. We are talking about teaching the language and using literary material for language teaching purposes. Now, when we do it, I think we have to have an idea what exactly we want to achieve with the material that we bring in. Are we talking about are we doing extensive reading? When the students do the reading outside, and occasionally we check how the reading is going on, we do some activities, we try to kind of generate more interest. We bring in cultural issues, political issues, whatever, depending on what suits the learners. But when, at least when I use literature, I do have a teaching point in mind. So if I use a poem, what is it in that poem that I want to, if you like, exploit for a particular purpose to enrich what I'm doing in my language classroom. So am I going to use a poem to work on vocabulary? Am I going to use it for discussion to develop discussion skills? So there needs to be some sort of teaching and learning focus. I agree, it's nice. I can do literature in the classroom anytime, any day, any moment. But if we go back to a curriculum needs to be executed, and the students need to prepare for their assessment, etc., etc., etc. So within that framework, we need to have some principles regarding what it is that we want a particular piece of literature to do in the classroom.
I do
If I
agree
may.
with you. I do. Pramalis, can I go first, and then I'll
Sure,
give you a
yes.
chance? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for your patience. I do agree, but I have. There are portions where there are parts where I disagree. One doesn't have to really call it out. And in context of Greece, if I am right, it is a foreign language by far, you know, and promoting language by any means is purposeful in its whole essence. Now, literature is not a part of curriculum. If it is not a part of curriculum, then you don't really have to come with a specific literary agenda to the classroom. And we're talking about fifth graders. The purpose was language engagement. So they are fully engaged with language. And I do see, I don't know how many of you are familiar with cognitive linguistics, but I cannot overlook the fact that this is language in use, which is usage-based approach that we have currently. So I don't think literature per se was a focus, or even if it was a focus, it doesn't have to be called out, saying that, all right, I'm looking at this particular aspect of the story. Did they understand the story? Did they read it on their own with a little bit of help? Yes. Were they able to guess certain portions of the story before reading ahead? Yes, that's more or less like the literary aspect of reading a story. Did they go beyond the story? But that's only possible if you've understood the story first, right? So I do see a lot of creative thinking, a lot of literary orientation also embedded in the lesson without having, without calling it out. Sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe I didn't clarify that. I should have clarified that from the very beginning. There seems to be an absence of literature there. Yeah. So obviously our motive was to help learners get in touch with literature, and because we're talking about a book which is unabridged, obviously this gave them more opportunities. I had to use video, I had to use technology to stimulate their interest. Yes, we did. We talked about some features, but not extensively, because this is something that they're going to do at a later stage. But this actually acted as a way to motivate them, to help them become more interested in reading. So, in a way,
well, I mean, that is purpose enough. Although there could be other purposes, but creating an interest in reading in a foreign language is purpose enough.
I think that I can see more questions there, more hands.
Let's have somebody else. How about Lasma Duina? Sorry if I messed up your name.
I think you need to unmute your mic.
Yeah.
Do you mean Maria?
Yeah.
Ask a question?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm going to the preparation because our class is very interesting. So my question is whether how long do you prepare for this, the lessons, and then what do you suggest, as you have already applied this in your class? What do you suggest us as teachers to target first? Is it the reading context first, or is it the reading skill first, or is it the in context, or what do you suggest us to do? Because I think I'm going to try to do this in my class. Thank you.
Let me clarify that this was a pilot scheme. We were just piloting where we explored the potential of asynchronous learning at a very young age, because they're fifth graders are 10, 11. Let me clarify that they were familiar with tools like Kahoot. All right, that puzzle, you create that. Basically what I did, I focused on small, yes, obviously reading was one of the, but that had to be done outside the classroom. Basically what I did is I tried to create a pacing. Of course, that was modified depending on the chapters and the pages and the content of the book. And depending on what the focus was each time, then I assigned work. But of course, I had to modify that quite often during the project because sometimes either they advanced much better than I expected. Some of the times it was a bit more difficult and I had to take it more slowly. But I think the key to that is, yes, plan, but of course, modify according to the feedback you receive. And I kept receiving feedback from the writing, from the speaking in class. Obviously, in your class, you might have more time to do that, which is quite interesting. And the problem was that I didn't have enough time to do it in class. That was one of the reasons why my peers were negative about it. Because if you have an EFL or an ESL syllabus, which doesn't include literature, obviously you don't have much time to do it. So I sort of stole time. Sometimes we can make up time for things that we're interested in. And because students were involved from the very beginning, we kept working on the project. If you try to do that, try to stimulate their curiosity. For example, I showed the trailer, I showed part of it. I said, well, you know, maybe you can read and try and find out if your guesses were correct or not.
Fantastic. I love it. Dr. Marine Milad.
Okay, hi, thank you for the presentation. And this is one of the examples of creativity. Creativity would be measured differently from different perspective, but I agree with Dr. Kathleen that it needs the language factor. Like the study is amazing, the piloting is amazing, but we can relate it to content-based instruction. You chose the literature content or of a movie or a trailer of a movie that is based on a book, maybe to get the students to improve their imagination, widen their imagination. Maybe you focused on the one step ahead with the application based on comprehension of what they have watched. Maybe as you asked us what might happen next, this is also prediction, and all of these are related to the language. Maybe as Dr. Catherine said, you should have focused on specifying enriching vocab or enriching grammatical aspect as past tense. This is also included, but I believe that your main aim was to help them to widen their imagination and come up with new ideas. My only question here is, what did you do in order to make sure that their work is original? They haven't received any assistance or feedback from their parents because they are grade 5. They are not adult enough. Even with adult students, we would have some suspicion about that. Thank you.
All All right, let me start with the last part of your question. It's very easy. I mean, if you have part of the text and you put on Google, it will appear. You don't need to turn it in, because we're talking about very small chunks of language. The very first sample that I showed you, what I really liked was that the student came. We're only talking about 10, 11-year-old students. He came and said, well, sir, I wasn't quite sure about some things. So I asked my mom, is it okay? Said, fine. And to be honest, because at this point, you simply want to encourage students to do things. You want them to create content. And you, of course, you encourage them. You really want them to produce language. You're dying to do that. And as you saw, some of them actually produced much, much longer text than expected. At this age, usually my students might produce a paragraph. I was very lucky and happy to see them producing long texts. Of course, they read the book. I can't tell you to what extent they read the book. Yes, I used Kahoot to check their understanding. So when they came to class and I had assigned, we played Kahoot. So I had an idea of more or less of what they knew or what they'd read, but that wasn't my main aim. My main aim was to help them become creative, to be exposed to real language, because this is authentic language. It's not graded readers, the one that they're used to reading. And well, that was, and of course, as a teacher, I wanted to explore the potential of asynchronous learning at such a young age.
Fantastic. Wonderful. I love it. I just wondered, real yes or no question, was this like 4 months, a semester, the whole year? How long was it?
It was only a few months. It was a bit less than 3 months.
3 months. All right. That's awesome. That's good to know. That's very helpful, actually. All right. I'm afraid we're about out of time. We've gone 25 minutes over time. We do have one last question. I hope you can make it super, super quick, because it's time to wrap it up, and we will start again tomorrow. Same time. For me, it's the morning. For you, it's the evening. And I hope everyone will continue. But we could take one more question. Please remember to sign the Google Docs so that your name is on our list for both days if you need a certificate. Thank you. And Dr. Egri.
Yes, just a quick question. Now that you have given your students a taste of what it is to read in foreign language and understand and do things, are you planning to continue this with them?
We still need time to explore even more the potential of asynchronous learning at such young ages. But what I really liked was the fact that when parents asked me what I should assign for Easter holidays are 2 weeks in Greece, I recommended a book. And the feedback that I received from many parents was positive, that their kids read a book. I don't know to what extent they read it. I don't know. I only recommended the level of the book. I said, you can go to a local bookshop, you can ask for A2 or A1 book and level books, and you know, your students can read, your kids can read it. The feedback we received was positive. Yes, we're going to come back. Obviously, this is not a formal research. It was a scheme that we piloted at school. And to be honest, I felt that it was a very interesting scheme. And we still have a lot to learn about how technology can be applied to classrooms at young ages. Yes, we know a lot of things about teenagers. We know even more things about adults, but not so many things about young ages. So maybe, who knows, in a couple of years, I might come back with a full research.
Thank you to everyone. Manisha, do you want to say something?
I just wanted to say the same thing. You stole my words. I just wanted to thank everybody for coming here, for being patient, for asking and engaging, for asking questions, for engaging. And what's interesting is Marine, Dr. Marine, actually her presentation is tomorrow, but she decided to join today. And what a lovely participation we had from her. So same goes for everyone, all presenters, all participants. It would be great to have you all back tomorrow. So without much ado, I would say good night, good evening, and have a great rest of the morning to those of us on this side of the planet. Looking forward to seeing you guys tomorrow.
Yeah. Thank you very much for presenters, for everyone. So see you tomorrow, and be sure that you have registered at the Google forum. Thank you.
Thank you.